This video talks about the Arch1 model. The Arch1 parameterization of the variance is the simplest and maybe also most useful parameterization. Learning points from the Arch1 do carry over to more complex E-GARCH models. I therefore take the stand that our intuition benefits from knowing the Arch1 model inside out. And with this video, I want to address the following topics. First, how does the parameterization of an Arch1 look like? Second, I want to derive the expectation, variance, and kurtosis of Arch1 errors. And third, I want you to see that for capturing fat tails in returns, you will have to restrict the parameter space, which can limit the usefulness of more complex E-GARCH models. So in order to introduce the Arch1 model, I want to remind you of our basic return decomposition, which I'm restating here. Now it says that we can decompose realized time t returns into an ex-ante expectation, which is mu t minus 1. It's just the expectation of rt as of time t minus 1, and into a statistical return innovation epsilon t. And that innovation is thought of to be the product of an ft minus 1 measurable volatility sigma t minus 1 and a fundamental innovation eta t. So let's turn to point number 1. An Arch1 model assumes the following parameterization for the conditional variance of prediction errors, where in the unconstrained form, the parameters of alpha 0 and alpha 1 have to fulfill the restrictions that alpha 0 is positive and alpha 1 is 0 or positive. Now looking at the Arch1 parameterization, you notice two things. On the one hand, return variance is assumed to be rising linearly in the most recent statistical return shock. So if the last return shock was large, you assume that the probability of observing another large return shock is increasing. On the other hand, if you set alpha 0 to 0 and alpha 1 to 1, you end up with the expression that sigma square t minus 1 equals epsilon square t minus 1. Now I like that expression because it highlights that assuming variance to coincide with squared residuals is consistent with a special Arch1 model. And remember, the tests for detecting arch effects worked with the time series of squared residuals as a proxy for variance. So here you see basically why that has been a good idea. Now let's turn to our second objective, the derivation of the first, second, and fourth moment. Note, the Arch1 model is symmetric and does therefore come along with a zero skewness. But as we see shortly, an Arch1 can account for fat tails or excess kurtosis. I want to show you that the first moment of an Arch1 random variable is 0. I also want to show you that the variance of an Arch1 model equals alpha 0 divided by 1 minus alpha 1. And if you look at that expression, you also note that the alpha 1 needs to be further restricted, as alpha 1 cannot be 1 or larger. Otherwise, you won't have a finite variance. Now I also want to show you that the kurtosis equals the following expression. Looking at the kurtosis highlights that the Arch1 captures excess kurtosis or fat tails, meaning it has a kurtosis of larger than 3 if the following restriction on alpha 1 holds. The more complex the Arch models, the more parameter restrictions you end up with, and the less convenient it will be to actually work with arch models in practical applications. One way to overcome this issue is to work with GARCH models or with stochastic volatility models. Now the rest of the video is on algebra. I will take the time to show you how to compute the above mentioned quantities. If your goal is to really understand how arch 1 dynamics work, I recommend you go through the derivations. Otherwise, you can turn off the video now and enjoy your free time. So first, I show that the unconditional mean of an arch 1 shock is 0. The typical trick is to use the law of iterated expectations. That means you write the unconditional expectation as the unconditional expectation of a conditional expectation. Now here's the math equation. On the left hand side you see you have the unconditional expectation of epsilon t. Now that equals the unconditional expectation of the conditional expectation of epsilon t, where you condition on t minus 1. You do that because now you rewrite the epsilon t by arch 1 assumption as sigma t minus 1 times the eta t. Since you have to evaluate the conditional expectation of epsilon t, you end up with the unconditional expectation of the product of sigma t minus 1 times the conditional expectation of eta t as of t minus 1. Note here the sigma t minus 1 is measurable as of t minus 1, so I can put that out of the conditional operator. Now, the conditional expectation of eta is 0, and therefore the entire product is 0. So I found what I wanted to find, that the unconditional expectation of an arch 1 shock is 0. Now let's move on to the variance. And we use the trick that epsilon t is a stationary random variable. Now therefore it holds that the expectation of sigma squared t minus 1 needs to be the expectation of sigma squared t minus 2, needs to be the expectation of sigma squared t, right? So the unconditional moment of these quantities, they all need to be the same. So let's start to go for the unconditional variance. So here we write the variance of epsilon t is simply the second moment of epsilon t, because epsilon is a mean zero process. Next thing we do is we use the law of iterated expectations, and we write epsilon as the product of sigma times the eta. And now that's the equation you end up with. And again, you see why we do that, because the sigma squared t minus 1 is measurable as of time t minus 1. So it goes out of the conditional expectation operator. And second, the conditional expectation of eta t square is simply 1. And therefore we found an intermediate result, which is that the variance of epsilon t is the expectation of sigma squared t minus 1. Here's what we do next. We now plug in the arch 1 parametrization into the last equation and take the constants out of the expectation operator. So it means the expectation of sigma squared t minus 1 by arch 1 assumption is simply alpha 0 plus alpha 1 times the expectation of epsilon squared t minus 1. Now we use again the law of iterated expectations, and we are rewriting epsilon t minus 1 by its parametrization to coincide with sigma times the eta. And we end up with that second equation here. Now again, note the conditional expectation of eta squared t minus 1, conditional on t minus 2, is 1. And therefore we just derive that the expectation of sigma squared t minus 1 equals alpha 0 plus alpha 1 times the expectation of sigma squared t minus 2. And now here we use the stationarity of epsilon. which implies that the expectation of sigma squared t minus 1 needs to be the same than the expectation of sigma squared t minus 2. We combine that with the previous insight that we derived that the expectation of sigma squared t minus 1 is simply equal to the variance of epsilon t. We therefore rewrite that last equation as the variance of epsilon t equals alpha 0 plus alpha 1 times the variance of epsilon t. And now we solve for epsilon t, and you see it coincides with alpha 0 divided by 1 minus alpha 1. So let's move on to the kurtosis. Kurtosis is defined as the fourth moment divided by the squared second moment. So we've just determined the squared second moment. That's the one we have to determine, because the squared second moment, or the second moment, was just determined, and now we go for the fourth moment. So again, we will rely on the law of iterated expectations and of the concept of stationarity. So we compute first the conditional fourth moment expressed in the next equation. Now, sigma t minus 1 to the power of 4 is measurable as of t minus 1, so we put that outside of the expectation operator, and we end up with the expectation of epsilon to the power of 4 in time t, conditional on t minus 1, is sigma to the power of 4, t minus 1, times the conditional expectation of eta t to the power of 4. Now, in order to compute now the fourth moment of the fundamental shock eta t, we need to know which statistical distribution does eta follow. As of now, we just assume that eta is an IID 0,1 process. Now, that leaves the fourth moment unspecified, as we only made an assumption on the first and second moment. Therefore, we need an additional assumption. Now here for the exercise, we assume that eta is a Gaussian N01 process. It's known that the fourth moment of a standardized Gaussian random variable is 3. And hence, going back to our last equation, we can therefore continue to say the conditional expectation of the fourth moment of epsilon is simply 3 times the volatility as of t minus 1 to the power of 4. So now we plug in the parametric arch1 structure for sigma to the power of 4. Now that gives us that the conditional fourth moment of epsilon is simply 3 times, and now we have alpha 0 plus alpha 1 epsilon square t minus 1 to the power of 2. So next we multiply out the square terms and we get the following expression. Now we use the law of iterated expectations to state that the unconditional fourth moment is simply a function of the conditional fourth moment. I'm highlighting that now mathematically in this next equation. So what we now do is we plug the parametric expression for the conditional fourth moment into that last equation and put all the constants out of the expectation operator. So what we end up with is that the unconditional fourth moment of epsilon is 3 times, and now alpha 0 square plus 2 alpha 0 alpha 1 times the unconditional second moment of epsilon plus alpha 1 square times the unconditional fourth moment. Note the unconditional second moment of epsilon was previously determined. It equals alpha 0 divided by 1 minus alpha 1. So we plug that in and regroup terms and come to this next equation. What we now do is we rewrite the right-hand side with one denominator and group terms. And that gives us the next expression. And that expression we also rewrite in a nicer form so that we get the following equality. So the last we now do is we solve explicitly for the unconditional fourth moment of epsilon. And that gives us, it coincides with 3 alpha 0 to the power of 2 divided by 1 minus 3 alpha 1 square times the ratio of 1 plus alpha 1 over 1 minus alpha 1. Okay, so we found the fourth moment and we now have everything at hand to get the unconditional kurtosis. So we now simply plug in the unconditional second and fourth moment into the definition of kurtosis. So the kurtosis is defined as the unconditional fourth moment over the variance to the power of 2. So we plug in the previous results and we get the following equation. Now we regroup terms a little bit and we are getting that the kurtosis is 3 times the ratio of 1 minus alpha 1 square over 1 minus 3 alpha 1 square. So after all that algebra, you've learned that the Arch1 parametrization accounts for excess kurtosis, which means a kurtosis that exceeds the Gaussian kurtosis of 3 if the following parameter restrictions hold, meaning the kurtosis of an Arch1 model is above 3 if alpha 1 square is positive or 0, but less than 1/3. Now that tells us that if you estimate an Arch1 model for residuals, the model has a finite unconditional variance and fat tails if the estimated alpha 1 coefficient is in the range of alpha 1 being below 1 and alpha 1 square being below 1/3 but positive or 0. So you either have to run a constrained estimation or you hope for the best. But now in all seriousness, you see from that simple arch model that these parameter restrictions could become an obstacle for more complicated arch models and for the data that you're working with. So the way around that obstacle is to either use E-GARCH models or stochastic volatility models.
Got feedback? We would love to hear it. Please drop us a line. And if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.